Gratitude is a currency that we can mint for ourselves and spend it without fear of bankruptcy. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your host, Shamisa Ali, and it is a pleasure being here with you this evening. Our topic tonight is how does the US 2024 election impact Guyana? The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guyana. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narain from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh, and our panelist. Good evening, Dr. Tara. Our panelist is Professor Muniram Budu.
Hello, Shamisa. Hello, Tara.
Our guest tonight is the former president of Guyana, Mr. Donald Ramotar. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
You're muted, Mr. Ramotar. Can you unmute?
On mute.
I'm on.
Yeah.
You're good. We can hear you. Dr. Tara, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, and welcome to our viewers, and welcome to our panelists, Dr. Muniram Budu, Professor Muniram Budu. Dr. Ganga Ramdas should be joining us a bit later. We are very happy to have with us the former president of Guyana, and he was also the General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party. He has a long and distinguished career in the political field, helping to build the PPP party. Welcome, Mr. President. And before I ask you to comment on the likely impact of the American election in Guyana, I would just like to have your comments on and there was a lot of controversy over how the 100,000 cash grant will be dispersed. If you can offer some comments on that, and then we'll proceed.
Okay. Good night to all the viewers. I'm very happy to join you in this program. As far as the cash grant is concerned, I think it's very straightforward. All Guyanese over the age of 18 are entitled to this are entitled to this grant that the government is giving out, this one-off grant, and I understand it will be paid before the end of the year or early next year. So it's very. I think the government has simplified it, because you remember at first they were talking about to each household, but I think they probably changed their mind because of the fact that you got households that have more than one family, and it could get a little bit messy as people not so sure. So I think they simplified it by giving to every person 18 years and over, and then that will, I think, solve the problem and ease any type of the confusion that they will have there.
Well,
so I think it's gonna
go ahead.
Would be.
I believe overseas Guyanese are entitled to, provided they have a active Guyana passport or ID, and they have to be in Guyana to receive it.
That's right.
All right. Now with the
That's
U.S.
right. You're right about that.
Yeah. With the U.S. elections, a lot of Guyanese are wondering to know what will be the impact, because, with Democratic administration, Guyana have never had an easy time. You know more than anybody else what they did work in 1953 to suspend the Constitution, in 1964 again to throw the PP out of power, and they have been silent through this 28 years of PNC rule. So if you would like to make a general comment as a start, then then we'll ask you to clarify or comment on a few specific points.
Well, I think Guyana now has become much more um, grabbing much more attention from the United States, particularly since we have found oil in our country, and so therefore there's a lot more attention than it used to be in the more recent past. I don't expect a major radical change in their position of the Republican government towards Guyana. I think there would be more or less a continuity. I think they have a position on some of the main issues and some of the issues that we are most concerned with. Like they have they expressed an American position on the issue like the Guyana Venezuela position and so forth. So I think that those things will more or less remain the same. I think that the as far as the politics is concerned, the links of the two politics, I think the opposition had using identity politics had more connection with the Democratic Party. Using race as a factor. I think with this administration, that might not be a strong issue as it used to be with the Democratic Party. And already, I believe you can see the opposition beginning to switch their tactics. In when the Democrats they were in government up to now. At one time, the opposition used to be speaking about racism, that the government is discriminating against African Guyanese, etc., etc. Now, since the election has been in the United States is over, and the winning of the Republican Party, they're changing their propaganda to try to influence the United States government to talk about Chinese influence, Russian influence, um, that type of link with terrorists and all of that. Forgetting they are forgetting that they are the only party in Guyana who have been linked to terrorism. They are the only party who had a member of parliament arrested and for trying to destroy the John F. Kennedy Airport, and he died in prison in the United States. So I think they're struggling. They'll be struggling to change their line and change their attacks, the line of attack against the PVP government. We can
Well,
expect some changes in the emphasis now that the new Republican Party is in government.
yeah, yeah. I know that the Brooklyn clique here was very anxious for the Democratic Party to win, if not the presidency, at least the House of Representatives, where their favorite person, Hakeem Jeffries, would have been the Speaker of the House. And there's where they were hoping to establish or to fortify their links with the Black Caucus in America. But it appears that will not happen now because the Republicans have also won the House of Representatives. So, another point I want to bring up to you before I hand you over to Professor Boudou is that the current nominee for Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he showed an interest in Guyana elections in particular. On the 9th of March in 2020, he wrote a strong note condemning the attempt of the PNC to subvert the democratic process. He will also pay a very keen attention in future political developments in Guyana, I believe. But we got to continue overseas, Guyanese, especially in America, to continue to inform him and enlighten him about developments in Guyana as we have been doing for some time, especially before the last elections. So I think that he will look at Guyana very, very critically, but he will not succumb to any kind of race baiting and all the shenanigans of the PNC that they were doing with the. Remember, they bring down some black legislators to investigate allegations of discrimination in Guyana, etc. So those things I don't know. They will. Uh, are you there?
Or I think we lost him. So we're going to wait for him to come back in. You guys can continue if you and Professor
Okay.
Buduan, if you want to continue discussion.
So I was saying that they took down a team to find that there was discrimination, but I don't think they found any race discrimination. There was just alarmist concerns, and I think that the president, as President Ramotar just indicated, they're shifting their strategy. Now, Professor Budu, what are your comments so far?
Well, everything we can talk about is all speculations. We don't know how any of these guys are going to behave once they get into office. But I think Guyana will still be in the focus in the U.S. because of oil, and I think they will preserve the status quo that we currently have, and perhaps move forward with Guyana producing probably more oil. The U.S. is still the number one producer of oil, and they're going to drill more oil in the future. So that's a key area of interest for the United States.
I think that the foreign policy will change, and Ghana don't have to worry too much about the territorial controversy with Venezuela.
I don't know. It's still, I think this is something I need to ask President Ramutar. What his ideas are on this border issue.
Hi, Sarah. I'm having some technical difficulties.
I just spoke to him. He said he has some technical difficulties, so he will see if he can connect with his phone.
I'm back on. I'm back on here now.
Okay.
My phone.
Okay.
My phone.
All right. Professor Budu was asking
Mhm.
about, he was seeking clarification on the Venezuela Guyana border controversy, if there will be any significant change in U.S. policy.
I don't think so. But anyhow, the matter is in court. The matter is in the National Court of Justice. Um, the position that the American government has taken is an American position and not a party position. And I don't think, and this matter has been existing more than 4 years ago when the Republican Party were in government before, and their position haven't changed radically. So I don't expect that there will be a big change as far as that is concerned.
Mm. So, you have an idea when a ruling will be made on the
And no,
Guyana
on the court,
by the CCJ? Yeah.
I'm not sure offhand, but I think maybe the coming year there might be some pronouncement on some of these things. In the not too distant future, the court will pronounce on them.
Mm. Professor Budu,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have.
President Ramutar, today's topic
Yeah.
requires high levels of speculation.
Yeah.
During the campaign, Trump said many controversial things and
Uh-huh.
how he would implement them.
Mm-hmm.
But we, and even he, does not
Mm-hmm.
know whether the implementation would occur as he stated.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to dialogue with you on matters with lower level of speculation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you were the current president of Guyana, what relationship would you seek with the U.S. and in what areas?
Now, I mean, the United States is a very powerful country, the most powerful country in the world. And obviously, one will want to have good relationship with the United States. Nobody wants to pick a fight with the United States. So I would do exactly what this government is doing right now, is try to have good relationship with the United States. That's important, I think, in order for us um, try to govern the country in a more comfortable way. You know, the question is not we have never been the ones to we have never been the ones to try to make problem with the United States. It's the United States that has been making problem with us. So that is what I would say, that we have always tried, in all our history, we have always tried to have good relationship with the United States because we recognize the power of the United States, and particularly within this hemisphere.
So, what areas though would you uh, dialogue with them or have an engagement with?
Well, we have a lot of dialogue already going on. More and more business arrangement we have with the United States. Um, we have arrangement with the United States, cooperation with them fighting drugs, fighting narcotic crimes, and um, money laundering, and many areas we have of cooperating with the United States that is mutually beneficial to both sides. Um, so I would say that the relationship with the United States now is a pretty healthy one.
Now, President Ali is engaged in several, and his government is engaged in several transformational projects, including road, bridges, energy projects, agriculture, and so on. Please comment on these projects and the implication to improve the livelihood of Guyanese and
Well,
significantly improve poverty, reduce the poverty level.
mm, but poverty is reducing. In fact, if we have a situation here, I'm not saying that we have liquidated poverty, but it has been reduced. I don't have figures that I can quote to you at this point in time, but the very fact that labor is becoming a big problem, to find labor, to people to work in the society, that's one of the complaints of many business people, that they're finding it hard to find labor to do work. So should suggest to you that
I think we lose
the
them again.
poverty.
I think we lost him again.
Hello,
Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm here.
yeah,
Hello,
yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes,
Go
we can
ahead.
hear
hello,
you.
hello.
Yeah, we could hear you.
No. No, I'm on. I'm here.
Yeah, we can see you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Continue what your point you were making.
Dr. Tara, we lost him. So if you guys want to continue the
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah. Well, what he was saying, and that's reinforced by what the Minister of Labour said, that he estimated that the unemployment rate in Ghana may just be between 3 to 5% now. And right now, um, Geico Construction Company have vacancies for 129 people in all categories, and they can't get people to fill them, even unskilled labor. And they're paying them good. Some of these people will now get at least 25 US per day. So the government is working on a plan now to get labor, so they got to reform the immigration laws so they can import more labor from overseas. Right now,
Welcome back. Can
Geico
you
has
hear us?
I'm hearing you. Yeah, I'm hearing you all the
Perfect.
time. I don't know. The problem seems to be at your end. It looked like they said I went to the backstage or something. So it looked like their
okay.
technical people got to keep me in the front stage and not in the backstage.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you continue, President Ramotar, on this
Yeah.
poverty issue.
Yeah, no, I think poverty had been reduced a lot. The government had been taking a lot of measures in order to fight poverty. Many people who talk about poverty probably talk about it stuck in the past. There's a great reduction. There's a lot of employment now. If you drive down on the coastal area in Guyana and even in the interior area, you will see the massive construction that is going on, which will suggest to you that it's absorbing a lot of labor. In fact, also not only are Guyanese getting employment, but a lot of the Venezuelans who have economic migrants that are in Guyana. Many of them are getting jobs on a lot of these projects as well.
Yeah. But do you think that at some point soon the Guyana government will have to import workers from abroad?
Well, it might be, but in some cases, I mean, in some cases, some of the projects that we're doing, we already have to have some of that in a limited way. For instance, the construction of the bridge across the Marara River that is going on now. Chinese are bringing in some labor in order to ensure that they reach their deadlines and so forth. So you have some of the roads that are being constructed in Guyana by one big Indian company. They have also laborers coming in from. They brought some laborers with them as well, in order to try to ensure that they have the labor needed in order to complete their projects on time. So the government hasn't come up with any policy of migration in order to import things. But in some cases, when they sign agreements with foreign companies to do these big projects, in order to ensure that they're not delayed, and Guyana government will have to pay liquidated damages and so forth if workers are not turning up and so forth. Right? Government has more or less been agreeing to allow them to bring in labor to do some of these type of work.
Yeah, but my interaction with Chinese contractors has been that whenever they go overseas, they bring everybody from sweepers who sweep the floor to the highest technical personnel.
That is not totally true. But I think they do negotiate in order to have a critical level of their own labor force. If you want, and not only in Guyana, I have traveled extensively in Africa some years ago when I used to be on the European Union ACP Joint Parliamentary Assembly. And I've seen a lot of the projects that they have there. And I've been told by many African leaders, members of parliament, and so forth, that if you don't allow that, you sometimes get a lot of delays in your project, and it costs the government a lot of money when they do that. So most government try to allow them to bring a certain critical amount of labor, but they do also employ local labor. I'm sure they're employing local labor in some of these projects as well.
Mhm. Now, the U.S. is currently the largest oil producer, and Trump plans to drill, baby, drill. That's what he says.
Mhm.
The World Bank predicts an oil glut in 2025.
Mhm.
How do you think this would affect Guyana's economic growth rate and implementation for further transformational projects?
Well, I'm going to speak with
Mhm.
in a qualified way, since I'm not a expert on oil industry as such. But I think that the Guyana government will continue to earn. I don't know how much, what a big glut that will be. That will be left to be seen if there will be uh, a major glut, because you still have Russian oil being restricted. The sanctions on Russia is still enormous, and it is, if it's not making all the impact that it used to be. Europe is not buying fuel directly from Russia. If they buy Russian oil, they're buying it through India and so forth. So I am not so sure that about the prediction of the World Bank, if they're going to be correct with some of these things. I know that there's problems in many oil producing countries in terms of production. The biggest producer in Africa, Nigeria, doesn't seem to be coming up to the level where you can create a glut or so forth. But that having said that, I think that the government is quite aware of many of these things, and they're planning to take those things into consideration in order not to keep their not to slow down their project, because the projects that are being carried on right now in Guyana have been badly needed for decades now. one of the things that have been keeping us down and keeping us back, economically backward, because we didn't have the infrastructure. And the government is now using this opportunity that they have to put in the infrastructure, both using oil money and non-oil money as well, and including also sometimes borrowing loans at good concessionary rate to keep our economy ticking over.
Now, what is your views on the Amila Falls?
I have been very much involved, intimately involved with that project, and if we had that, that project on at this point in time, we would have gone off. We would not have been having to bring in to rent some of the power that we're renting at this point in time. Although we would have still had to do some of that because our demand is growing very, very fast. And the Amila Falls project would have been a very, very important contributor towards the needs and the demands for electricity, energy in Guyana. And at the same time, it would have been able to make a big contribution in reducing the cost of electricity to our customers, both domestic and industrial use of energy. I think it's unfortunate. It was unfortunate that the PNC it was so anti-developmentalist that they voted against it, because all the studies were done showed that it was a very lucrative project. We had an investor along with us in Blackstone. Blackstone walked away only because the PNC voted against it in Parliament and we were close to elections. So they walked away from that project, but they were very gung-ho in trying to build that project because it was a boat arrangement, and at the same time we were not putting any pressure on the treasury, any pressure on taxpayers, and it would have been a real win-win situation both for us and for the investors.
Mhm. Why you think Guyana has such a revenge politics, where one political party seems to, when they get into power, seems to just shelve all the other projects, whether it's good or bad, that the other government initiated?
That is not totally true on our. That's not true on our part. If you that would more that will more fit the PNC when they get into government. For instance, they abandoned the Amila Falls project, and they abandoned other projects in 1960s. They abandoned the what is popularly known as the Del Conte Road, which is a very important road. But that has not been the history of the PPP. We have not abandoned projects that we think that it would be beneficial to our people when the other government had it in store. In fact, when we got into the government in 1992, we renegotiated the IMF projects, but we didn't abandon the program. We renegotiated it in order to have less severe impact on working people, but at the same time, we didn't abandon the projects that and the programs that they had. We went through with them. So I think you're talking to the wrong person.
Yeah, but no,
that is concerned.
no, I meant the opposition at the moment,
Yeah.
because all the projects you just mentioned, I know they have abandoned those projects, and those were important projects.
Yeah.
How much power would that Amila Falls produce?
I think it was 165 megawatts of power that we were looking at, which
Now,
was a substantial amount. I know we would have outgrown it, but it would have made a very important contribution to the mix.
Yeah, you kind of predict my next question would have been that, you said that you're growing very quickly, our power demands will be increased, so that power generation is really too small as we go
But
forward.
the project that the government now has engaged in, the Gas to Shore project, is a very, very important project to meet some of the needs and the demands that we have.
Because Guyana has one of the highest hydro potential in the world,
Mhm,
and especially in South America now.
mhm.
And
Yeah, and it's still underdeveloped. One of the
yeah,
things with it in Guyana is while we have this potential, it's still pretty far away from the populated area on the coast. Um, that is one of the issues. But I think looking at it broader, I think it offers us to have great cooperation with countries like Brazil and so forth to have a cooperation to build these things and to share the power
mhm,
together with us and with Brazil.
yeah, because in the 70s, I work on that Tibuco hydroelectric project.
Uh,
And part of that, at that time, Burnham wanted to sell some of that power to Brazil and a nearby country, but it
uh,
was too much of a big project at that time. Um,
I don't think it was not necessarily too much of a big problem, but I think also the border issue came in
mhm,
that that as well.
mhm,
All right. I want to switch gear a bit. The Biden administration was not in favor to give funding for any fossil-based project like for oil, etc. And that's one of the reasons it was speculated that the loan that was supposed to get for the gas to shore project for the American Exim Bank was delayed. Now that the new government, the Trump administration, is coming on stream and they're going to drill, 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 they will relax. So that may be a good piece of good news for the PP government that the administration now might sign off on this grant. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not a grant; it's a loan actually.
Loan, sorry, loan.
Um, but the government had made it very clear. Yes, yes, they were expecting to get the loan from the American Exim Bank, but they said very openly and upfront that even if they didn't get the loan, they're going to proceed with our own resources to build that because we believe it's a very lucrative project that it will repay for itself in a short period of time, and it's uh, to use the vice president's words, it's a no-brainer. I think, but I mean, I think it's the benefits so far outweigh any of the um, any of the negative issues that it would be a sin if we didn't do this.
Yeah, he did say that it will take just about 8 years to pay off whatever expenses. The other thing that I find a bit, I couldn't explain it, but the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, was in Guyana during the week.
Mhm.
I wonder, but there has been no official statement of the reason for his visit. You have any idea?
No, I can't. I can't give you more information. I would just. I think that he has probably interest in oil and maybe he has interest in business and the possibility of getting involved in some type of business in Guyana. That is my suspicion of why he's here because
Mm,
he's looking for business and maybe that's why he
mm,
has been visited at this point in time. But I have another some more broader concerns about the government in the United States as it relates to international politics, which I think is extremely dangerous for the world and catastrophic for the Palestinian people. And it seems to me that there will be no change when we to what is taking place in Palestine with the new government that it's coming on stream there now.
well, President-elect
And that
said that.
to me that to me is a humanitarian. That is to me is an issue, a humongous humanitarian issue that we are sitting back and looking at the genocide taking place. We condemn the genocide, but we are not
Mm,
doing anything about it. there, and this is the very same thing happening right now in the Gaza, and we're all looking at it, and nobody, no, I think we should be all shouting from the roof, stop the killing. This is the humanitarian issue.
Yeah, well, the president-elect Trump said he wants an end, a speedy end to the war, and I believe he will work towards that, as well as the Ukraine
Well,
war as
the
well.
type of people that he is, the type of people that he's beginning to employ in his administration um, doesn't really suggest that that is the kind of direction that he will go.
No, well, I share a different view on that. I believe that he want to establish that
And I
he
don't think
can get a peace. Yeah, and
South Africa was doing far less than what the Israeli government is doing, and they were suspended from the United Nations. And I think that there should be a big international outcry.
well, there was some talk that the U.S. should move away from the Paris Climate Agreement, but ExxonMobil has asked the Trump administration, the
I'm not
incoming Trump,
hearing you.
ExxonMobil had asked the incoming Trump administration
You're breaking.
not
I had a break in there
not
just
to
I
move.
wasn't hearing anything.
Yeah, the ExxonMobil had asked the Trump administration not to move away from the Paris Climate Agreement.
Mhm.
So Exxon has a lot of economic power, so I don't know what influence they have on the Trump administration. But because they made that statement in response to some corners of the Trump administration saying that they will move away from that agreement.
Mhm. Well,
So,
Trump had moved away on the first time he was president of the United States. He did move away from the agreement that were reached in Paris, and I think that is the fear today that he will move away from that. But in my own view too, is it's a lot of what is being said about environment and so forth. There's a lot of the question is extremely serious and a real issue for all of us, particularly those of us living in the south. We are seeing already we're beginning to have now environmental migration taking place because of environmental issues. And we in Guyana, the Caribbean, in low-lying areas and island states, we're beginning to feel it. Some of the hurricanes that are developing is getting stronger and stronger. And but I don't think that the one of my disappointment is that the quality of leadership in the developed world, European Union and so forth, because I think there's more lip service to climate change than what is real. If they were serious about climate change, they would not have had this war going on with the bombing and killing in Lebanon and in Gaza. You know how many million tons of dust they're throwing into the atmosphere? They would not have blown up the Nord Stream 2 pipe that has thrown a lot of gases that affect our environment internationally. That was the biggest environmental disaster. Nobody's talking about it. So I don't know how serious the unfortunate thing is that the quality of leadership in the Western world seems to be a set of people who do not appreciate that exist.
but some people have argued that the climate change people are, some of them are taking it to the extreme. They got to get a balance between economic development and climate change. You just can't do it radically. You got to move it gradually because people are thinking about their livelihood too. Because some of the measures that you would take will throw hundreds and thousands of people out of employment. So that is a dilemma that administrators have, how you reconcile employment with climate
I didn't get that.
change.
We had a break again there just now. Um,
No, the argument advanced that why you got to go gradual in climate change is because you don't want to displace hundreds of thousands of people. Because if you implement climate change radically, thousands and thousands of people will be placed out of employment. So you solve one problem, but you create another huge problem, which could be humanitarian and otherwise. So that is why they are arguing you must have like a balance between the two, and you can't take an extreme position in either side.
I think we lost him again.
Yeah, Professor Buru,
Yes, there
continue
he
me.
is.
There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
we
Yeah,
had a
so
problem again.
I was saying that like United States, I don't know. I haven't got a clear idea how they will tackle this climate change. Um, but they're speaking about gas, which is more environmental friendly than other forms of energy, etc. And wind power again is another. I don't know to what extent solar panels is they contemplate to use. Professor Buru, are you aware of any major project in solar panel in America? I
Yeah,
know.
California has major projects.
I think Colorado had a
I'm not
major project.
you're breaking up a lot.
hmm.
You there? Yep. Professor Buru, you had something.
Yeah. Can you hear me, President Ramotar? He's still
He's
he's stuck.
he's static there again.
Yeah. Let's wait a minute or two
Action.
and
All
see
right.
what happens.
So go ahead. Go ahead, so, Professor Buru, make your point to me.
And now, you're talking about well, here Shimiza comes on.
Make your point.
Yeah, yeah. Climate change, is here, and whether you go slow or fast, it's already affecting us, right? And I think the bigger countries are telling us that we are at fault. Smaller countries are at fault, right? We must do something about it. They will tell you, for example, that you must not produce more oil because that's causing the pollution. And yet they will go and drill as much oil as they find, you see? So I think it's all hypocrisy in
I'm
climate.
backstage again. They hearing me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, shall I
Yeah,
continue,
sorry,
Carol?
I wasn't hearing you all the time. There was a lot of breaking up.
Go ahead.
Yes. President Ramatar, you mentioned that the current say European Union, for example, their leadership, are not very keen on climate change, not doing anything. They talk a lot, but they're not doing very much. But is that strange?
Well, it is strange, and it is a real tragedy in a way, because climate change is real, and
Hmm.
we are beginning to feel it. There's droughts all over the world. Sometimes there's floods. Look at the amount of what you call natural disasters now are not necessarily natural disasters. They're all a result of our own activity and our relationship with nature. So it is those are the people who have the power to do something about it. And instead of doing that, they, in order to fight for domination of the world, for instance, why is there a fight with the United States and China when there should be cooperation? Why is there a fight with getting electrical vehicles from China? Because China is leading in that area now, that the United States wants to tax them out, and then at the expense of the environment. So that there's a lot of short-sightedness. Instead of building cooperation in so that we can benefit the world and the health of the world, they are the U.S. seems to be more focused on continuing to be the number one power in the world, and that is at all of our expense.
Yeah, the reason why I asked about it is strange. Um,
Mm.
the behavior of, say, the EU and their leaders is not simply restricted to, say, climate change. Everything
Mm.
else, you know.
No, but it's not only the EU. You mentioned just now that you mentioned to me just now that about how suggesting just now that President Biden was serious about climate change, but he's the man who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah, but the point is made by Tara. Yes. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes, but I'm saying that every other thing, well, he lost him again. Yeah,
I'm here. I'm hearing you.
yeah.
There.
As
Yeah.
every other thing, there's hypocrisy. There's
Mhm.
a flood in Spain recently, and a couple of hundred people lost their life, and it was all over the news, right? But there are millions of Bangladeshi who had to leave their home because of climate change and flooding of their lands. How many people have heard about that?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm not I wouldn't contest that with you. That is totally true what you're saying there.
Mhm.
But it's not only the Europeans, but the North Americans too. Canada and United
Oh
States
yeah,
is
yeah,
not doing
yeah,
anything better.
yeah. Now, since we are kind of a politics
And,
here,
and under Trump, it might get worse.
yeah, let me bring you back to closer to home. Uh, Dr. Tara Singh, our moderator, has written a newspaper article recently on possible U.S. interference in the 2015 election,
Mhm.
resulting in you and your party losing power. Have
Mhm.
you read this article? Can you comment on this assertion?
No, I didn't get a chance to read it. I've been occupied with some other issues, but but he's quite right. I think I have been saying so from the very beginning that and it can be proven. The problem, it can be proven because they still have all those votes locked up in a container. We had and we can, of course, now it will be academic, but I still think the vote should be recounted and let us really know the truth for the in the interest of truth and the interest of our history. I think those ballots should be recounted.
So who has to do that? Is there a court matter?
There's a court matter, but it was never heard. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what's happening in Guyana. The case never came up. We had went to court. It was around the same time when Kenya had elections. After
Mhm.
us, Kenya had elections after us. They had a court case challenging it, and the people nullified the election, and they had to run another elections again. And up to now, our matters cannot be heard. So
Mhm.
it tells you something. But as I said, I'm sure that the elections were rigged, and the same method was used that they attempted to do in 2020. But in 2020, they were caught.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, they managed to get away with it in 2015.
Mhm.
Y- You know,
Yeah.
one of the things that happened just before the elections, where the U.S. had an astronomical rise in the award of visas. From 2014 to 2015, it was over 53%, and the following year, it was another 70% rise. That massive rise in visitor visa is really inexplicable. And the theory advanced was that they tried to get as many people out of Guyana so they wouldn't be able to vote. I
I'm not sure. I mean, okay, I heard those arguments too, but I am not complaining if people want to travel and so forth. But the thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that the elections were rigged. Even with all of that, what you're saying, my
Mhm,
contention is that the PPP won those elections and it was rigged. The same
mhm,
way they rigged it in 2020, but fortunately for us in 2020, they were caught. It was the same method used, using the spreadsheets instead of the statements of poll. And then we couldn't find when they wanted to have some recount in Region 4, the presiding officer disappeared, could not have been found until the legal time had elapsed. There was a case where we lost by one vote in Region 8. There was no recount done there either. On the Western Marara, there were many boxes that were not inputted into the count, into the computer. So there was a lot of things that went wrong with those elections. But as I am saying now, it's now more academic, but for our own history and for history itself, we should recount the votes, that because they still have those votes locked up in a container. And for us to know the truth, we don't have to speculate on it, that I don't have to say, and then people say you're wrong and so on and so forth. It could be proven still.
Now, since you mentioned this election and judiciary, and we know that the election fraud that occurred in 2020, well, attempted fraud in 2020, and the people have been charged with this, and it's still languishing in the courts. Can you comment on the judiciary in Guyana?
I think I don't want to add more than what the Attorney General said. I agree with him completely. I want to be very careful with what I'm saying, but because many of the decisions that have been taken by the courts of Guyana, particularly in the cases that have political connotations, you will see that most of the decisions that went against the PPP, if not all the decisions that went against the PPP, by the Court of Appeal and so forth, they were overturned by the Caribbean Court. They were overturned by the Caribbean Court, which suggests either incompetence or political prejudice. That's the only two things I could put it down to. And the quantity of cases that have been the quantity of cases that have been reversed, decisions that have been reversed by the Caribbean Court of Justice, is very unusual. Very unusual, to say the least.
Is there no shame?
All right. All right. Shamisa, do you have any questions?
We don't have any questions at this point, Dr. Tara.
Okay,
So you can continue.
Continue. Continue, Professor.
Yes. So why is this case languishing, this election fraud case? I mean, I think our viewers probably would like to hear about your opinion on this.
Well, I think I can only speculate. But I think that there was, but when the case came in, the PNC was in government, and I think they used some influence that they had in order to ensure that the case did not come up. As I said, now it's just academic now, and I don't want to waste the court time. I would suggest that the PPP drop the case, but in dropping the case, ask them to recount the votes that they still have in the ballots.
Yeah.
But for the case, for our own, so that we don't have to speculate, so that we don't have to say that the elections were rigged. Let us count the votes, and then we will know if they were rigged or not.
No, my question was really referring to the 2020 election.
Oh yeah, what's that again? Repeat.
Yeah, why those cases still languishing in the court? And
again, it suggests very carefully that there's political prejudice in the courts as well, because one time people getting sick, and then people changing magistrates and all of that, and these things are just being stretched out, maybe hoping that time will overtake them, and these people can not have to face the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, but this is very embarrassing. It makes the country looks bad.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course, it makes the country look bad.
All right.
The very fact that we couldn't calculate what is the half of 65.
Yes.
Yeah. Professor Budul, make your last point.
Well, that was
or
really my
or,
last
or
point.
comment?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm.
Shamisa, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Uh, thank you, Professor Budu. And my question to our former president is, you just mentioned 2015 elections, 2020 elections, everything that's still pending in the court. Going forward, we have elections coming up in 2025. What has the PPP government or the Guyana Elections Commission, what do they have in place so we are not repeating the same mistakes or the same challenges that we faced in the past? All eyes are in Guyana right now, right? How are we making sure that these elections go a little bit smoother? We're not in the same mess that we were in those previous years.
Well, there's several things I think the government is doing. They're talking about not the government as such, but the the elections commission.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the suggestions that are being made is that they, as soon as the votes are finished counted in each polling place, that it be made public. It put out to the public and not got to go to a center again to before you wait to get the official result. While we're waiting for the official result, you can release those things that are being signed off by all the parties concerned. So the public will have all the information in their hands, and they don't have to wait. Anybody who is interested can just copy down those things that are going to be published, publicized as soon as the count is finished, so people will know if anybody tries to do anything funny, it will be make it almost impossible for them to do that. That's one of the measures that I remember that is being taken right now. It is very obvious that the opposition commissioners are trying their best to see how they can slow down the process, put things in place to try to stop the process. I was part of the PPP team when we negotiated in 2005 to go towards continuous registration, largely because before 2005, before we went to continuous registration, it was a kind of a periodic time, and we were at the mercy of the elections commission. At every election, you had to do a completely new list again, and if you had like something like we had in 2018, a no confidence successful no confidence motion, then you couldn't go to elections because they didn't have a list, proper list, and so forth. So the continuous registration was agreed on by both the PPP and the PNC. I was on the PPP team at the time, and we agreed on that. We knew that the main thing in all of this is that we must not have duplicate voting or people anybody voting more than once. And by that we use the biometrics, the fingerprint, and that whole list every time just before elections is sent to the United States, and so that they can pick up if there's any duplicate to knock out any duplicate that is there. And the main thing in all the elections is that only genuine people will vote. In fact, in the 1997 elections, what I thought was one of the best elections that was held, um, when we brought in the CARICOM people, one in their report, the cross report, he said we found not a single fraudulent vote. So the main thing in a free and fair election is that you have one person, one vote, who are entitled to vote, and nothing else. And I think some of the measures that are being taken, I'm not following it as closely as I used to, but some of the measures that are being taken will make it more difficult for them to rig the elections.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I will now ask you for your closing remarks.
Well, I'm sorry that we didn't get a chance to talk more about the implication of the politics of the United States on the world, what is happening in the world, because I think that we are in a very, very dangerous position in the world today. The war in Ukraine, which was encouraged, which was a totally unnecessary war. It should never have happened. I don't think you are old enough to remember, but the other two gentlemen in the frame, will remember in 1962 how the Americans behaved when the Soviet Union put a missile in Cuba. They were ready to go to war with that. Now you want to put nuclear weapons not 90 miles away from Russia, but on the border. And Russia was, since 2008, Russia was pleading with them that this should never happen. And now you have a dangerous situation where the possibility of nuclear powers can get into conflict, and that will mean a disaster for every one of us. Well, wherever we live, it doesn't matter if we live in the United States or here or not. I think it will be a big issue. So I think the consequences to international relations, I think we probably should have discussed more. And the other issue as directly relates to Guyana, I mean, I think most people are talking about, more people seems to be focused on what Guyana Venezuela issue and in relation with the United States, where I don't think that I don't think the American position has changed on that. There's no indication that they changed their position. But there's another aspect that Guyanese should be concerned. What about those many Guyanese who live and who are not citizens, who didn't have their papers right, who live in there for 10, 20 years and living a decent life with jobs, with children, with families? And if Trump decides to carry out his threat of deporting all of them, this will be a horrible disruption to people's lives. And I hear the Guyanese community in America commenting on that, and I think that that's an important issue that people need to make representation for people who have been contributing to the society in a positive way, but who are in danger of having their lives turned upside down.
Thank you very much. Great points. And Dr. Tara, maybe we can set up another time for former president to come back and have a discussion about that, because it's one of the things that many people here in the United States, or Guyanese people, are very fearful for. In a good way, though, maybe it will mean that they can go back home and vote in the next election. So uh,
Yeah,
we have to look on the bright side of things. All
yeah,
right. I do want to say thank you to our panel, to Dr. Tara, to the
thank
former
you.
president, Mr. Donald Ramotar. Thank you so much. You were so knowledgeable and you gave us so much points that was necessary. Thank you so much to all of our viewers. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening. Until next time, I am your host, Shamisa Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue.
Thank you very
Thank,
much,
thank
Mr.
you.
President,
Thank you.
and
Mr.
thank you,
Ramotar, we can
Professor
stay
Bodu.
on for a little bit.